We're going to look ahead to Detroit. I'm going to tell you who can win a job and lose a job and who needs to play well this week. We'll do all of that here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Locked On Jaguars, hosted by me, Tony Wiggins, where it's your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen. A quick reminder, if you're watching on YouTube, great. All you got to do now is hit the like and subscribe button and hit the bell so you get notifications whenever you get a podcast. If you're listening to an audio podcast, and wherever you listen to that podcast at, you know what? Make sure you check in every single day to make sure you do not miss an episode. We want to give a quick shout out to the everydayers of our show. We call them everydayers because they're here every day, and you can be here every day. We'll call you an everyday or two. There you go. I have said that word 5 times in 12 seconds, but it is a real thing. And if you're new to the show, it's a real thing that you joined us. I'm glad. I hope you enjoyed the content and come back. Remember, free on YouTube. You can subscribe and make sure you don't miss an episode. All right. What we're going to talk about now is leading up to Detroit. We're going to look ahead to Detroit. They are taking off tomorrow to have joint practice sessions with the Detroit Lions for a couple of days. Yesterday, during the press conference, Doug Peterson mentioned a Zoom conference with the media. He mentioned that it gives them the chance to get some good work in and see some things they haven't seen, because they are a 3-4 alignment team, and a 4-man front team all the time is what Detroit is. And it'll give them a chance to get a different look, show what they could do against those different looks, break the monotony of basically practicing against each other every single day. And of course, you know how that could be when you practice against you try to be as honest as you can about it, but even you can almost sense in Doug Peterson's voice yesterday that they kind of know what's coming. You know what I'm saying? You still got to go out and do it, but you kind of know what's coming. And then I know at one point earlier in training camp, you had to pull guys together because guys were trying to hit a little bit too roughly. I know some old school players would have probably been like, you don't have to warn anybody about that. But yeah, these days you do, because you're all on the same team. You had to kind of remind them that they're all really on the same team, even though they're competing for jobs. So that leads us to this conversation. That's why these preseason games, everyone talks about, they're not important. They are, because those guys that are striving for work, they want to separate themselves from other players. How do you do that? You do it with live action and physicality. Everybody knows the drills, okay? And folks can dissect that, and coaches can look close enough and tell if a guy is dropping his hips, or if a DB is changing his hips and opening up too quickly, or they can go through all the technique stuff. But there's some things about actually playing the game on game day that you cannot, you can't imitate it, right? There's no simulation for it. And even in practice, when guys are caught going a little bit too hard and they have to be pulled back, well, those guys are doing that because they're really trying to show, improve, and trying to make the team, right? So the best way to do it, if you got to pull back in practice, is to take advantage of the playing time you get in the preseason game. And I don't care at what point they get into these games, they have to take advantage of it. Now, I know practice against Detroit, they may have some rules, some things that the coaching staff might come together and say, hey, let's, make sure we do this to do that. But for the most part, these things can generally get chippy, because I believe guys are going to go out and try to do everything that they can to win a job. And they'd rather bite and then be told not to bite than to be told that they need to bite, right? I'm not talking about actually biting people, even though Dan Campbell did talk about eating people's kneecaps. That's not what I'm talking about. What I mean is you kind of always want to pull your, if you have a protection animal, you kind of want to pull him back a little bit. And I do think the coaches want to see a little bit of physicality. So all of this, the things that we're going to talk about here, what we think coaches want to see, we're going to hit that in segment 2. It's all based on my experience of what I've seen and heard coaches do and say. This is not coming from Doug Peterson's mouth. This is not coming from anybody else's mouth. I want to make that clear. It's coming from mine. So when I put this particular information out there, it's coming from my ideas of what I've seen through training camp and me reading the tea leaves. It's not someone's actual words or opinions. There are some things I tell you that I don't even tell you where they come from, but if I'm definitive about it, I know what I've heard someone say sort of off the record. That is not what this is either. This is just my assessment of what we need to see. Who can win a job? We're going to talk about that in segment 3. Guys that have a good shot at winning a job up in Detroit, or at least cementing and stamping the job that they have already won, that they're going to be able to come away with. If you saw the thumbnail, I have Walker Little in front of it. I wish I could have had him and Anton Harrison on it, because I think it's a big test for those two guys. A lot of people are going to talk about this matchup between Aiden Hutchinson and Trayvon Walker. That's fine. I saw him on the same field in college, and there's nothing that I saw then that where my mind got changed this year. I was able to watch Trayvon a little more closely than, say, people that don't follow the Jags every week. And I know what Jaguar fans are thinking. They'd rather have the guy with 9.5 sacks and 3 touchdowns. There are some people that haven't given up on Trayvon yet, but there are some folks that would evaluate everything after 1 year and say that Aiden Hutchinson should have been the guy that they picked, right? More and more people, though, think the other way. There are a lot of people that believe that the Jaguars did make the right choice and that you're going to see that this year. I know for what they want to be, and I know the thing that everyone talks about now is sack numbers, but I also tell you that when Yannick Ngakoue was here, and he had, over the last 7-8 years, he's been one of the most prolific sack guys in the league. Folks were also saying that that wasn't enough. And I know you can say one thing and then also the other thing can be true. But the reason why I brought that up is because if you had to have a choice with a guy who can play the run or play the pass, but they can't do the other thing, everybody right now, because of right nowism, they're going to take the guy that gets sacks because that's what they want. But that's not the thinking when the other guy was trying to get paid and get some money to stay here. That's not what the thinking was. But now that they want to get after the quarterback, or that Trayvon was picked number 1 overall, they feel like he should be a sack guy. You shouldn't pick a guy number 1. And folks have been hung up on this number 1 thing for a long time, that if you pick a guy there, he shouldn't be a project, or he shouldn't be someone that you're waiting on. I don't necessarily agree with that. And that's where me and a lot of people, we kind of get off track a little bit. There's not one person I've ever heard in that building say Trayvon has been a disappointment. There's not one person I believe who would refrain from saying that if it was true. Right? So I don't think he's a disappointment. So I'd said of Walker Little and Anton Harrison. You know why? Because if they play well, it will shut some of that stuff up, especially if they play well early against Aiden Hutchinson. If they don't, it's going to open up a can of worms that ain't none of us ready for. If Aiden Hutchinson gets 2 sacks and Trayvon Walker doesn't, even in this preseason game, we are going to hear shows next week, and we're going to hear everybody next week saying, I told you, they should have took the other guy. So this is why I want them to play well. I want them to play well because I want them to show that they can stand up to better pass rushers, because those guys didn't play any starters. Dallas didn't play any starters last week. So I want that to happen, but then I just don't want to hear those other narratives coming out about a damn preseason game. But we know what it is because we know how it works, and we know what always goes on. So we're going to be prepared for it, and that's why I'm sitting there asking y'all, please, please, please don't fall victim to that stuff. But we don't have to worry about it. If Walker Little goes out and does everything he's supposed to do, everybody will be fine. All right. All right, we're going to give you more of that information in just a second after I let you know about today's sponsor. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So with draft prep underway for the upcoming season, let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Now, listen, if you're looking for a safe quarterback to take as a starter late, while you wait on that position, then you can ride with Vikings quarterback Kirk Cousins, one of the most consistent, healthiest, and most reliable passing producers. Cousins has great weapons in year two of a pass-happier offense under Kevin O'Neal, from Justin Jefferson to rookie Jordan Addison. He'll once again drive a team that is really well loaded first at other positions. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championships, and eBay Motors knows the championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With eBay Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories, your vehicle is right at your fingertips, being able to fix your vehicle with all of the accessories you need. You can make sure your ride stays running smoothly with air filters, brakes, tail lights, alternators, shocks, struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it, and they'll make sure it's the right fit for your car, because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle the first time. So go for it, switch gears, crank the AC, and say goodbye to sweating if your ride needs a little fixing up, because now you know you'll always be set up for success from the get-go with eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit. Everything your vehicle is calling for is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that your vehicle needs, just look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. All right, running it down here on Locked On Jaguars. I am the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, Tony Wiggins, and I'm sincerely glad that you all are able to join us here today and every single day, making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars. If there was ever one of these preseason games, and there's only 3 now because they've gone to the new schedule as of last year, I think the one that is going to make the most difference is going to be this one, because I cannot imagine that at some point we're going to get to the point where we don't see the starters. I doubt if they play a whole bunch of starters the last preseason game. I think that'll be a bunch of guys, a bunch of friends guys trying to make the team or trying to put out a bunch of good tape. And I understand that, and I think it's actually the thing that should be done. But there's also still a lot to be said about not playing those guys the last couple of weeks of the season, because there's a 2-week break now between actually playing the players and when the actual game starts. And that's when I'm sure that they'll be doing most of their install once they get their final rosters, or closer to getting their final rosters done, instead of doing it in front of everybody else, because a lot of those guys may end up going other places, and you don't want those guys going to other places that are on the Jaguar schedule, because then they could give away a lot of trade secrets. I know you guys are probably like, is that really real? Yeah, that kind of stuff is really real, man. Teams will hustle a guy up for all of the information that you're going to get. So I don't expect a whole bunch of playing time from the starters too much, and for it to go too long. I do expect that you're going to see some position battles. You're going to see some spots where the Jaguars really, really do want the guys that are out there to be performing at a seriously high level. I think they want to see to make sure that Walker Little's going to be all right through the first 4 games until Cam Robinson gets back. They probably want to see a little bit more than that. What you saw last week from Anton Harrison was really, really good. But I'll temper all of that and say that they didn't play against any starters in Dallas, and that wasn't the test that coaches were really looking for. I think this week they'll get more of a test with that bunch from the Detroit Lions. This is a base 4-3 team. Last week in Dallas, it was a base 4-3 team, but Doug really kind of acted like this is the first time they're really going to see anything. And that's because I think this is the first time they're going to see any starters. And I believe the starters will go for a while. They're also really, really scrappy on their own offensive line with some really good players. They have really good receivers, and Amon-Ra, St. Brown, running backs. They have speed at these other positions. They really get into a rhythm with a sort of a rhythmic offense, and they hustle and play real hard on defense. There are going to be a couple of guys over there on that defense that the Jaguars didn't take, like Brian Branch this year, and of course Aiden Hutchinson last year, and you'll get a chance to see those guys close up. But the Jaguars players have to know that they need to handle their own business. They have to handle their own business. Most of these guys, if you're someone who is trying to convince the coach that you need to be kept, this is a week, for instance, if Kayvon Chason is ever going to make a play, then this is one of them. Now, I know a lot of y'all are like, please don't do it. I don't want him to make a play. I don't want them to give him a reason that they're going to keep him. Well, the point is if he makes a play, they're probably going to keep him. If he doesn't make a play, then they'll probably continue to explore the market. Now, I know that everyone's saying that all of the defensive edge rushers are leaving the market. There's some guys out there that will be available for trade, I believe. And I'm not the only one to believe it. I was talking about that with Demetrius Harvey, the beat writer for Florida Times Union and Jacksonville.com. And we discussed the possibilities of that. And we even mentioned a couple of names. Like if they don't get this right, they might be able to use some of their currency and make a trade or two for some people who can get it done. You hope, though, that they get DeJuan Smoot back early in the year. You hope that once they do that, maybe Nasir Abdullah or Jordan Smith start showing up and they realize they can count on those guys to be reserves. But here's what's going to happen. If you're going to make the team, and I mentioned Jordan Smith and a lot of these other guys just like that, this is where you're going to do it. You're going to do it this week. If you're one of those wide receivers that's competing for that 5th, that 6th spot, if you're going to get it done, if Kevin Austin and all of those guys, this is where it has to happen. If you're Parker Washington, who I believe has a real good chance to stick around, then this is a week where you're going to probably get a chance to make a play. And you're going to probably get a chance to make it with some of the starters still in the game because they may go a little longer. This may be the game. I think the game 2 of the 3-game preseason is very similar to what game 3 of the 4-game preseason used to be. And I'm really, really glad they abolished that old 4-game system and they only have 3 now. But all of this stuff means that the Jaguars are going to have to really, really put the pressure on these guys, do well this weekend, because you don't want folks to start panicking thinking that, hey, this team ain't going to be ready. But that's exactly what they're going to do if they have a lackluster performance this week. So if they're keeping score, go out and try to win the game. That's the best thing that I think, the best advice we can give anybody if they're keeping score. I'm going to mention some names. I said I was going to name some names. I'm going to name some names of guys for you to watch out for that have a chance. Guys who are people who have made this team before, and then other guys who are trying to make it. I'll name some of them who this week is more important to, and we'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, Jags are headed up to Detroit for 2 joint practices and a game this week. This is the last practice that they had here in Jacksonville, and camp is swiftly coming to a close. And I ain't gonna lie, a little bit for the media, we stand around looking crazy. I'll tell you, I'll take you behind the veil a little bit. It's kind of like the dog days for us, right? Because while you're watching practice, you don't really know exactly what it is they're trying to accomplish. It's almost like they're playing pitch and catch right now. And then because of the weather, they had some sort of weather conditions, so they moved things inside. And that's when I just decided to come home and go ahead and pod, because at this point, you're not really getting anything that is going to let you know anything about the team. Like, as long as somebody doesn't get hurt right now, what you're doing is looking at a bunch of pitch and catch, and they have guys separated into different groups. That's why I say if somebody's going to make a move, if somebody's going to make some noise and put something on tape that makes this coaching staff think twice, it's going to have to be this week. If it's not this week, by the time you get to that last week, these teams are really trying to formulate their roster, work on their practice squads. If you are a player that's going to make noise this week, is the week for you to do it. Trey Herndon, I think he's on the team unless someone just takes it. So that means Greg Jr., Monteric Brown, Chris Claybrooks, whoever they're depending on that's going to be a nickel. Whoever they depend on that's going to be an extra outside corner. Monteric Brown, all of those guys. Eric Hallett. This is the week that I think the men and the boys get separated in that secondary. I think Antonio Johnson's going to be fine. I think Mike Thomas, he has to watch it a little bit. Guys like him, Wingard signed and got guaranteed money, so I think he's good. I'll be interested to see, and I was going to ask Doug this yesterday, but I never got a chance to get to my question. Are the numbers set up already? Do you already know from a team building standpoint, okay, we're keeping this many guys. This is how many guys we have to have. And we're keeping this many guys. Say we're keeping 9 linemen. We're going to keep 9 hand on the ground linemen. We're going to keep 4 outside linebackers. We're going to keep 4 off the ball guys. I wonder what those numbers are and how hard those numbers are. And what I mean by how hard those numbers are, I wonder if it's negotiable based on the fact that, okay, at a position group where you say you want to keep 10, what if that extra receiver, and you've already said you're going to keep 5 or 6, what if you can't really tell the difference between number 6 and number 7, right? And he's clearly a better football player than, say, the 10th DB. Does it come down to whether or not he can play special teams or not? It also comes down to how much versatility you have within your DB room, or how much versatility you have in your wide receiver room. For instance, if that wide receiver is the best high point ball catcher you have, that might lead you to say we need to leave him on the team and then kick that other DB out and maybe put him on the practice squad. And then if something happens, we can decide who we're going to dress and who we're going to bring up and who we're not. So I do think you have to make sure that just from a number standpoint that you don't do yourself a disservice. And usually that's with the big guys. All right. That's with the big guys on offense and defense. You get caught-handed. You get caught short-handed. I said you get caught-handed. If you get caught short-handed with one of those guys, then you have some major roster problems, like not just in game, but just being able to field the team. So last year, I thought they got caught one 300-pounder on defense too short. I think the way they drafted and the way that they added guys this year, that I think they knew that too, and they had a problem stopping the run in some of those games that they lost. I think Houston, if they could have stopped the run better, they would have won the game. I really believe that numbers are important. But when it comes down to 1 or 2 guys, are those numbers more important than, say, that guy's potential to actually get better? They're only seeing Jordan Smith do what he's doing, and I thought he's been practicing better lately, and he played well in the game the other day. A guy like that who was hurt all last season, how much benefit of the doubt are they giving that? I know they're giving some of that to Caleb Vaughn, who's been banged up a little bit, and they want to see his potential. But at some point, when do you decide to give up on a 23 or 24-year-old, and then you don't want to see him go anywhere else and all of a sudden start living up to that stuff? So I do think Caleb Vaughn has to play this week well. I think Trey Herndon, they can't just be sitting there thinking that guys like Greg Jr. aren't going to come and take their lunch money, and like Devon Wilson, like they're not going to come and take stuff. I think Caleb Vaughn needs to play better. He shouldn't rest on his laurels that, he's going to outperform Jordan Smith. They've had a bigger sample size of Caleb Vaughn than they have had of Jordan Smith. So he has to be, very careful. I think Yasir Abdullah has made enough waves and enough name for himself that they're going to put him out there, and he's going to play too, and he's going to be a part of the rotation. Staying healthy is big. Fullerunzu, Fadakazi, guys like that, they got off to a slow start last year because they were banged up. We don't want to see them banged up. So right now, those defensively are the guys that we're talking about. Offensively, it's all about Kevin Austin and the rest of those receivers, those candidates for a receiver. You want to see guys separate themselves. Can Snoop Connor hold folks off, right? Can Garrett Prince find himself being the third tight end? These are things. This week is the chance that you get to make some plays. And to hold people off. I'll be interested to see if they give Ben Barch a little bit of run, being that he just cleared his physical. If they're going to get him out there and move him around a little bit and let's see where he is body-wise as we head into camp. They're probably going to play Cam Robinson some more. Can Cam show them enough to give them an idea of exactly what they'll have when he comes back in week 5? And Walker Little is going to have to make sure that he doesn't go out and stink the joint up too and give the Jaguars a reason to be worried about something else, because they play some really good pass rushers early on. All right, you guys make sure you hang tough and watch the Locked On NFL show also on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Locked On NFL is a daily podcast that gives you around the league coverage. I'll be on there Wednesday with my man James Rapine, but every single day is really, really good. Make it your next watch, your next listen here on Locked On NFL and Locked On Podcast Network. All right, until tomorrow, you guys take care. I'll give you everything I can about joint practices as soon as I get any information. Until then, you guys make sure you take care of each other. We'll see you next time here on Locked On Jaguars.